Welcome back, dear friends, at Lit eCity YouTube channel, the one-stop destination for English literature. Dear friends, we are in mid of the series most important writers, in which we discuss about some writers, especially of 20th century. In fact, all writers we have either to done belong to 20th century. These writers, they are not the part of the canon, I repeat again and again, but they are very important one. Uh, Today, we are going to discuss these writers, which include Nigel Dennis, a writer who is basically related with war poetry, Brigid Brophy, a very radical feminist writer, Ronald Firbank, another artist, another writer who wrote about the experience of the war, Freya Stark, she is a travel writer. She traveled extensively, and her experience are basically used in her works. And R.C. Sheriff, who is a rather forgotten dramatist, but who has contributed to the English drama. So let's start our discussion with our first writer, that is Nigel Dennis, 1912 to 1989, an English writer and critic, and he is, along with that particular school known as the absurdist dramatist, he also known for his absurd plots and witty satires. Dear friends, if we talk about Nigel Dennis, his early childhood was spent in the then Rhodesia, which is now known as Zimbabwe. And when he returned to England, he started his academic or professional career as a journalist. Then his first novel, Boys and Girls Come Out to Play, which was published in 1949 and whose US title was A Sea Change. It explored the psychological concept of fitting oneself in the social context. It is one of the themes which Nigel Dennis has explored again and again. A particular theory according to which if people are channelized, pressurized, they fit themselves according to the given identity, which he explored in his most popular novel, Cards of Identity, which is actually a sharp satire on the psychological practices, psychiatric practices of the day. And in this particular novel, almost long, empty, and dilapidated country house, it is reopened by Captain Mallet, who his wife and his son Beaufort. Now, yearly they conduct a kind of conference, a summer conference, which is known as the Identity Club, which is basically a group of psychiatrists and psychologists who try to persuade people to instruct who they really are. Once again, you can see the prolongation of the theme of his first novel. Now, other satirical works by Nigel Dennis include the highly successful play, The Making of Moo. Now, this Making of Moo is a bitter satire on religion in which a colonial administrator, he is there to construct a dam, and unfortunately during this process the local the deity, his statue is broken. Now to give a sort of compensation, he makes a statue of a new god he creates and calling that god Mu, and he himself becomes a priest. So this is basically a sharp satire on the hollowness of this whole religious system. His knowledge of journalism, it inspired the satire of the August for the People, which is basically a play on the power of the press, and then his traveling, his love for the Mediterranean region, which is expressed in an essay on Malta, and also his very popular poetic collection, Exotics, which is a volume of poems and set mainly in the Mediterranean region. Next writer is Brigid Brophy, 1929 to 1995. A long life, a very controversial academic life, and she was always in the limelight for her works and opinions. She is a critically acclaimed novelist, a literary critic, and social commentator, and her works are noted for their radical treatment of themes like feminist issues, homosexuality, and child labor, all these gender related issues. Her first novel, Heckenfeller's Ape, published in 1953, is about a plan to send an ape into space and a counter plan to prevent it. The whole novel is basically once again a satire of the scientific methods, experiments, and the way we are passionate about it, which according to Brigid Brophy is just a foolishness. Then, with her husband Michael Levy and literary critic Charles Osborne, Brophy wrote the controversial book 50 Works of English and American Literature We Could Do Without. Actually, she wanted to highlight that books which are, according to these people, overrated. It includes very classical and very popular critical works, including even Hamlet by Shakespeare. So, obviously, the book created a furor because many people, many art critical critics, many writers were offended by her choice in this particular list. The King of a Rainy Day, which is her most autobiographical novel, is actually about Suzanne, which is her own portrait and her not quite boyfriend Neil on their quest to find her school friend. Then The Snowball, another remarkable work by Brigid Brophy. It is about Mozart. She was keenly interested in this classical musician Mozart. She has also written his biography, and Mozart's celebrated opera Don Giovanni, which is quite popular an opera, and the novel has base for it, reimagining the relationship between the titular character DG and then Donna Anna, the young women he tries to seduce. Don Giovanni is DG. Now, the setting is that of a ball, the time is that of winter, different guests, and all their, we can say, inner urges, their hidden fears, they are explored in this remarkable psychological novel. Brophy's non-fiction. She is also a very popular and very important writer of non-fiction. It includes Black Ship to Hell, which is once again a brilliant analysis of man's destructive impulses. Then Mozart, the dramatist, is inspired by Mozart's psychological adoption of his dramatic themes. Then other works include Black and White, a portrait of Aubrey Beardsley, which is once again a biography, and a well-received collection of selected journalism, Don't Never Forget, published in 1966. The next writer we are going to discuss is Freya Stark. Dear friends, Freya Stark, long life, 100 years, so a whole century of experience. She is known for her travel books and acute observation of the local history and culture as well as everyday life. Her first visit to Middle East, Baghdad, in her late 30s, where she learned Arabic, learned the local language, observed the local customs, and then began exploring modern day Iran and that particular area. And it resulted in her very famous book, The Valleys of the Assassins. Then she traveled extensively in the Middle East, Turkey, Greece, Italy, even India, and made her home in the end in Italy. Later visited Asia, notably Afghanistan and Nepal, and other books, travel books, which are based on her experience of traveling are The Southern Gates of Arabia, Letters from Syria, Alexander's Path, and the Minaret of Jam. These all are based on her traveling and her observation during those travels. Ronald Firbank, a very short life, 1886 to 1926. He is one of those English authors who achieved little recognition in their short life, but now he is, especially Firbank, has been reassessed as a leader of the aesthetic movement. We have read about Brigid Brophy. An interesting fact is that Brigid Brophy was also a biographer of Ronald Firbank also. Now, during his own life, Firbank suffered from critical health issues, and because of this, he spent his youth drifting around Spain, Italy, and Middle East. His short novels and plays are baroque in their nature. If a work is called baroque, it means it has a very ornamental kind of prose style, surreal and absurd in the highest degree. Now, his most famous novel is concerning the eccentricities of Cardinal Pirelli, which sees the eponymous Cardinal Pirelli, Prince of the Church, and he is christening his dog, which is a religious practice, very revered practice, so he is making fun of it, and dying of a heart attack chasing a choir boy around the altar. Fencing Nigger, another kind of, we can say, absurd work. It examines a socially ambitious black family in a fictional Caribbean republic. The Flower Between the Foot, another popular work. He invents a fictional Balkan country and tells about the mechanism of the king, queen, court, and clergy. Wellmouth, a very popular work by Firbank. It is set in a health resort on the west coast of England, where most of the inhabitants, the people living there, are over 100, and they are celebrating their birthdays. Many of the characters in this particular group are openly gay and as outrageous as Firbank was himself in his life. He was actually, Firbank's life was inspiration for Nancy Mitford, the later 20th century novelist. The character of Cedric Hampton is based on Firbank in novel by Nancy Mitford, Love in a Cold Climate. Our last writer for the day is R.C. Sharif, English playwright and screenwriter who served at front in World War I. After serving in First World War, Sharif began his career as a writer, and drawing on his experiences of the war, he wrote this play, Journey's End. This play, Journey's End, is considered as an authentic draft of the war experience, which is a moving account of life in a dugout on the Western Front in 1918. His other plays, which are also highly popular, are Saint Helena, Miss Mabel, The Long Sunset. His 1939 novel, The Hopkins Manuscript, is considered to be written in the spirit of H.G. Wells. It is a post-apocalyptic story about an Earth devastated because of a collision with the moon. So you can understand it is quite in line with novels of Wells. Sharif also wrote scripts for many successful movies. He is a very popular screenwriter. He was nominated for Oscars also. The Invisible Man, Goodbye Mr. Chips. It was for this movie that he was nominated, and odd man out. So friends, this is all in our today's episode about great writers which are very important, especially if you are aspiring for JRF. Go to these writers, think about them, write about them, and when question comes, feel confident and do the right choice. Thank you, dear friends.